Welcome everybody to my channel, The Apprentice Adventurer. In today's video, my final thoughts / review on the all-new 2026 Yamaha Tenere 700. Now, if you're wondering why I'm going to say what I'm going to say and you have missed out on the action, go back through my channel because the last few videos I've done 1,000 kilometers on this bike. There was a first impressions ride, which some things have changed from that ride to this ride, or this review, should I say. There was a hard terrain test ride, and there was an overnight adventure ride where I've loaded up the bike. And I'm actually doing the filming for this review at the end of that ride, because what better place than this as a backdrop, so you've got something a bit better to look at than just me and the bike. Now, when I do a review, I try to do it from two different angles. Angle number one, if you could only own one bike, but you want to do overnight adventure rides, you still want to do those hard enduro / adventure day rides and everything between, how does this one bike stack up across the board as your only bike? And then the other angle I'm coming from is, I don't want to read a specification sheet. I'm not here to give you the finer details. I just want to give relatable, real world information. Why? I'm not a professional rider. I haven't had a background of riding as a kid. I'm not a mechanic. I'm just a guy who threw a leg over a bike and have been learning everything the hard way over the last decade or so. So I just want to give information out there that I would have wanted to hear when I was getting into this adventure riding hobby and or looking for a new bike. So let's get into it. Today's review is going to be in the form of a SHIT sandwich. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to give you all of my positives about this bike that I feel like are worthwhile mentioning in no particular order. Then I'm going to give you all my negatives about this bike that I feel like is worth mentioning in also no particular order. Then I'm going to do an overall wrap up, an overall positive wrap up, and then finish off with who I believe this bike suits the best. Now stay tuned towards the end because I haven't heard anyone say this, but no doubt they have, I just haven't heard it. But my opinions on who this bike suits the best might be a little bit different to what you have heard, so stay tuned for that. So my first positive is the suspension on this bike. Yes, it is soft, but if you didn't want to go forking out extra money, you didn't want to go real hardcore riding, you could get away with doing nothing on this suspension. Why? It's fully adjustable. But how many times do you hear fully adjustable, but the only thing you can really do is turn clickers, and if you really want, get the old hammer and the flat blade screwdriver and try to play around with the collars on the rear suspension. This bike has got a preload dial underneath. You just turn it, you can actually watch the suspension spring compressing. Heaps of adjustment there, clickers and preload. And the front, you just need, I think it's a 14mm socket, and you can just turn it and you've got preload adjustment at the front as well. So not only do you have the clickers, you've actually got a fair income fully adjustable set of suspension. And I've played around with it a fair bit, and at 100 kilos, I could get away with not doing anything on this suspension if I didn't want to spend the money. If I wanted to really go all out, yeah, it's going to make a difference, but not totally necessary on this particular bike. That front preload adjustment is a really good addition. Secondly is the power. I thought when I was going to ride this bike, it was going to be an uncontrollable amount of power, and I've been running in sports mode the whole time, the more powerful mode. Man, the power is so smooth, so usable on the dirt as well. As long as you can manage the clutch on the harder terrain and sort of go half clutch, half throttle at time, this is a wonderful bike to ride, and by no means is it too powerful to handle. So I think, yeah, it's kind of like a downplayed version of power, but I really like it because you turn the throttle, it's usable. You're not worried about flipping the bike all the time. So really, really well done from Yamaha in terms of how they've applied the power to this bike. It might be a little bit too less power for some, but for me, I think it's fantastic. So although this is going to be a negative as well, the ground clearance is also a positive, believe it or not, because when you are on the hard stuff and the ground clearance hasn't been what's thrown you off the bike, you can actually lean the bike over on those real steep hills when it's on the side like this, and you can push the bike on that big oversized peg and the bash plate. You can actually pivot the bike because you don't have to lean the bike too far to engage the bottom of the underneath there. So although the ground clearance is a massive negative in the hard stuff, it can also be your saving grace to get out of the hard stuff. So I've put that as a positive as well. The front brakes. This bike has, I'm just going to say, tremendous front brakes, dual calipers up the front. I love them. They're so aggressive that you've got to be careful, but it's got great braking power. The screen is another massive positive. I haven't had a screen like this before I thought it was too big, but you know what? I think it's perfect. It really is. It's well protected behind here, very bright, and it gives you all the information you need. You can change buttons and whatnot to toggle through the screen, but I really like the screen, very, very bright. Although the screen has a lot in it, and you've got all these buttons in the cockpit, I believe now that I've got the hang of this bike, it is a very basic design with all the buttons. When you first look at it, you're like, oh man, there's a fair bit going on here, but there's not. It's just because it's got some writing and some arrows, but end of the day, there's like 3 buttons you play around with at the most, and it's very, very easy to use in my opinion in terms of the technology and toggling through it all. The next thing I want to mention, this comes in handy off-road. Maybe it's because it's 208 kilos, maybe this is for all the big bikes, but it has this bulldozer feel where the littler dual sports bounce off a lot of things. Yeah, the suspension absorbs it, but they get deflected at times. This thing here, it just plows through the terrain. You don't really notice the corrugations. You don't get affected by the wind. I suspect it's because it's a bigger bike and all big bikes are like that, but if not, this T7 on the medium to a little bit harder terrain, and then all those fire trails, it just plows through it. You just hold on and let it take you for the ride. So I think that gives you a lot of confidence on the off-road stuff. I'm not talking about the real aggressive steep stuff, but it goes down hills really well as well. It really handles the off-road in a very sturdy fashion is what I would say. So that is really good to know, because I thought I'd be all over the place, but that wasn't the case at all. Very, very comfortable off-road. My next one is, it's also surprisingly nimble. Now, I'm 6'4", 100 kilos. I believe because I'm tall, I get away with this because I don't have to be fighting the bike all the time when I've got the feet either side on the ground. But I don't feel this top end heaviness that some other people comment on. That could just be me. I'm not just saying it. It actually feels like a nimble bike for how big it is. I thought I'd be going, sort of getting thrown around a lot more, but that wasn't the case. But for me, I can save the bike from falling because I can get my feet on the ground quicker than a shorter rider could. Perhaps that's what's aiding in feeling more nimble for me. But I've really enjoyed putting this in the hard stuff. And furthermore, when you're on the windy roads on the tar, this does feel nimble. It rips into the corners. It feels stable. So very, very happy how it feels overall on the hard stuff and on those windy roads. The next point is the fuel usage. This bike's done 3,000 kilometers. I've done 1,000 kilometers of them myself. The average fuel usage has been 4 or 4.1 litres per 100 that whole time. No matter how I ride this bike, load it up, rev it, whatever, it doesn't seem to change. So at 16 litres, 25 kilometers per litre, theoretically, there is 400 kilometers in this tank. I'm always getting over 300. I haven't pushed it beyond 350 yet, but based off my math, 350 is very doable on this bike, and you can ride it pretty hard. So fuel usage, I think, is really, really good. I'm not sure what everybody else thinks, but for me, big bike, heavier, you can thrash it and you're getting good fuel range. So really happy about that. That then brings me to the sound of this bike. For an OEM stock standard bike, yes, you could replace the exhaust to save some weight. I really like the noise of it. It's not too obnoxious. It's got a nice meaty sound to it. And if you didn't want to spend or waste money and you're not looking to save weight, that exhaust, it's fine. It sounds really, really good. The next positive is how it carries weight. I said this in my first sort of intro of my overnight adventure ride, but because this bike is 208 kilos, this 15 odd kilos, you do not feel it at all. Yeah, you feel the bags hit you, but it doesn't throw the bike around at all, and it doesn't affect the power at all. You put this on a small dual sports, which I got great experience in, those things I just mentioned are adversely affected. It's all very doable, don't get me wrong, but the bigger bikes, no doubt it's for all big bikes, it carries the weight so well. Another thing, whilst I've been looking over this bike, I did have to take a plastic off to pop one of the indicators back in, but it appears to have very, very good quality nuts and bolts. Sometimes you get those ones that are a bit cheaper and they age very quickly. From what I can tell, I can only go visually, quality parts on the bike, which I think is very important if you're spending $22,000. My final positive that I feel like is worthwhile mentioning, At $22,000, you'd expect it to be good, but on the road, this bike comes into its own. For an adventure touring type bike, hell, you could even call it a dual sports if you wanted to. This bike, it's at home on the road. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about the seat and the visor shortly in the negatives, but overall, the bike is just pleasant to ride on the road, and for $22,000, so it should be, in my opinion. Now, let's get to some negatives. My first negative I'm going to mention is this front visor. It's kind of like in that no man's land where it's not protecting you enough and all the wind gets pushed into your head. I've had a lot of comments over the last few videos agreeing with that. Sadly though, as you ride the bike, you just get used to it though. So once you get used to it, it's not a thing, right? But when you first jump on this visor, yes, it's not great. I think what Yamaha could do, they've already got all the R&D for this front mold, no doubt, is make a tall and a short version, because if it was taller, yeah, you're protected, and there will be riders that want that. But I think if you went shorter to get clearer air, but also in the real aggressive stuff, 3 times that screen has hit me in the helmet because I'm so far over the bike. Yeah, I am taller and I've got a longer body. So I would be very happy to buy one of these with a short screen option, and there'll be people that maybe want a tall screen option. Just my thoughts on that. But stock standard, that whacks you in the head with wind, but yes, you do get used to it. My next negative is this seat. In my first video, I thought it was great, but it's not. This seat, the longer you sit on it, it's like the foam doesn't have enough density. It starts just disappearing. I've got a bit of a bony bum, but whilst I'm sitting on it, after about an hour, I'm getting actually very uncomfortable. And when I hit a pothole or a bump on the road, I'm actually, I mean, it could be because I'm 100 kilos, I'm compressing this all the way and I'm hitting with my bum cheek bones, I'm hitting either the frame of the bike or the frame of the seat. And it generally, like, you're like, oh, that, I can actually feel that. So I don't think this seat is good for long distance riding, even though it feels good to start with. That is something I would replace. So now I'm going to mention one of the positives into a negative, the ground clearance. Although the ground clearance can save you, turning on a hill, which I used a few times, it can also be the hindrance. So yes, the bike's a big bike. It's got enough ground clearance to do what you've got to do. But if you're used to a smaller dual sports, yes, you do notice the lack of ground clearance, hitting rocks, going down a step down, you might bottom out on the ground clearance. Does it throw you off the bike or not? It hasn't thrown me off yet, but I'll definitely be investing in a very, very strong bash plate. So when I picked this bike up, I brought 2 tubes, front and rear, and some tire levers, with the expectation that at $22,000, there'd be some tools to take off the wheels at the very least. Unless I've been given the wrong information, I was being told, and I can't find any, there are no tools to do your basics on the wheels. At $22,000, I would have thought Yamaha could, I don't know, put a nice little purpose-built tool kit under the seat here. There's plenty of room, but be prepared to supply your own tools to take your own wheels off when you buy a Tenere 700. Now, this bike, I have said it's great off-road. I have complimented it at every aspect on the hard terrain, but it is a tall man's bike when you're in the hard stuff. If you don't have exceptional balancing and exceptional technical skills, this bike here favors a taller rider in the hard stuff, because as soon as you have to go slow and you can't balance and you have to put a foot down, that's when the weight of this bike is going to beat you up. When the bike gets to a certain angle, I'm able to get a foot down to stop this weight becoming an issue, and I'm good to go so I don't feel it. But there is a certain lean that once this bike gets, and if your foot hasn't hit the ground before that, there is no way you're saving the bike from dropping. So yes, it is very, very capable, but I do think if you're a shorter rider and you don't have a high level of skill, this bike, you're not going to really like it in the hard stuff, that is, because it is too heavy once it's down on a certain angle. That then brings me to the weight. 208 kilos wet weight is the claimed number, I believe. I'm probably going to cop a bit of criticism online for this. For me, I don't think it's heavy. I'm putting it in the negatives because I think for a shorter rider, yes, a heavier bike, you're not going to have fun on the hard stuff. But for me, no, I didn't think it was heavy. I think it's going to be a very personal decision. But yeah, it's heavier than my lighter bike that I've ridden. It's heavier than a dual sport, so you notice it. But it wasn't to the point where like, oh man, I'm just hating life riding this bike. But I have listed it as a negative because it's still 208 kilos for the everyday rider. The oversized pegs, that is technically a positive because when you're standing and riding out there, these oversized pegs are fantastic, but it comes with a cost. It's probably something I would want to try to change in terms of the rear brake if I owned one of these. But because the peg is so big, I found it very awkward. I'm getting used to it, but very awkward to roll my ankle or foot off the big peg and engage the rear brake when I'm standing up. So yes, the big pegs, they've got the benefits, but you will notice to engage that rear brake standing up, it's more of a whole leg motion rather than just a roll of the foot. What Yamaha could do, I don't know if they're allowed to, but is get one of those pivot peg type designs, because you've got the big platform, but then you can roll the whole peg forward and engage that brake much easier. Just some thoughts that I've been having about that. My next negative is the plastics. They look strong, they feel strong. I haven't broken any, but if you had a small Dual Sports for an aftermarket set of plastics, about $200. I looked online and for a basic non-OEM set of plastics, $550 to replace the set. So I think as these bikes get bigger and more expensive, it's natural that anything you break on them is going to become more expensive to replace as well. So I'm not going to say that the plastics are weak by design, but just start thinking it's going to cost more money to replace things on these bigger bikes, in my opinion. My last negative, I have read this online, I have seen it in person, and now that I've got this bike, I can see it happening. But below this bag, it's the main brace or the main bracket for the exhaust. I can see that bending. I can see that it's a weak design. I can even just move this and get so much flex. So if you're going to drop your bike, that is likely to bend. How many times it can bend, I do not know, but that is something you would want to replace for sure. So that's all my negatives, guys. Far more positives than negatives, but in the comments, if you've got anything else to add for other people watching this, different positives, different negatives, please drop them in there, because I'm only giving what I think was worthwhile mentioning. But overall, I didn't think I'd be here saying this, but overall, this bike has been so pleasant to ride, overwhelming, exciting. I've had such a blast being on this. I really have. I've been known to throw a fair bit of mud at the bigger bikes, but I'm going to eat my own words in this particular case anyway, in this particular bike. It's the only one I've ridden in a long time. I loved it. It was fantastic. It really was. I think such a bike suits me being a taller rider. I didn't shy away from the hard stuff. It was so good on the road, minus a couple little bits and pieces. I had a great time. I really did, and I'm pleased to say that. I'd rather say good things than bad things about a bike. But who is this bike for, though, is more important. This bike, in my opinion, is for a range of people. If you're new to adventure riding and new to motorbiking and you're a shorter rider, I'm going to say short and tall quite a bit, yeah, this bike is for you. If you want to go on the hard stuff and you're a shorter rider, no way. Unless you've got a high level of experience and you know how to handle the bike and your balance is exceptional, this is not a bike for a shorter rider in the hard stuff. Yeah, it's an entry market bike in terms of the power, because now that I've ridden it, the power is not so crazy, it's uncontrollable. So for a new person to the adventure riding scene, I do believe this bike can be for you, but do not point it into hard stuff if you're a shorter rider. But if you're a taller rider and new to riding, I do believe, now that I understand the application of this power, I would say you could buy this bike as a new rider if you're a taller rider, because you could learn with the bike. The power is not too crazy that it's going to be uncontrollable for you, and you've got the downplayed power mode. But if you can fit your feet like this on either side of the bike, like I am now, you can practice on a hill and just put your feet either side of you, so you've still got that balance. The shorter rider, when that bike's here and you can't put your foot down yet, it is definitely going to drop. But when you're tall, you could learn on this bike and grow with the bike. So I do believe if you're a taller rider and you're new to riding, you could be on one of these bikes. And then of course, if you're highly experienced and you are vertically challenged and you can throw around the bike, I have seen a guy, he's probably like 5'3" or 4". He actually looked for high points to get off the bike, but he threw this bike around like it was nothing because he had the skill to do so. Well, there you go, guys. That is my review of the Yamaha Tenere 700. Overall, I think Yamaha put together a fantastic machine. I hope this has been useful information. It's just my opinions, of course. One thing I just realized I haven't mentioned or haven't even spoken about is the ride-by-wire throttle. I haven't mentioned it because I haven't even thought of it. It's been great. But a benefit is that you could now get this bike remapped or reflashed, should I say, to get more out of the engine if you wanted to. But on that note, I'm going to sign out. Hopefully this video has allowed you to make an informed decision, but stay tuned for my next adventure.